Official visit weekend is finally upon us, Jordan. We've been talking about this for months, going back to the uh, the elite retreat way back a couple months ago when we had a great turnout and we had I think we rattled off 6 or 8 commits immediately following the elite retreat back in March. But here we are, the end of May. It's official visit weekend. This coming weekend, we got a long list of guys that are coming into town. Clemson has already had a ton of success in the 2026 recruiting cycle. We already got, I think we're up to 15 verbal commits at this point for the class, well inside the top 5 as of right now. That may change going forward. But again, it just speaks to the quality of player that Clemson has verbal commitments from so far, and then the guys that we are continuing to go after. And that's going to be the theme for the official visit weekend this coming weekend. We got a bunch of big names coming to town, some guys that we are looking to gain some ground on and possibly close a couple books and get some guys locked up with some verbal commits coming out of this weekend. Traditionally, the official visit weekend in the summer for Clemson has been huge. And I anticipate another boost in momentum for Clemson recruiting as far as the 2026 cycle goes coming out of this official visit weekend. I know we don't have time to go through the exhaustive list of guys that will be on hand for this official visit weekend, both guys that are already verbally committed and guys that we are looking to lock up. But let's just highlight a few of the names, Jordan, that people should be paying attention to coming in this weekend. The likes of like Carter Shrugs and guys that, Matt Luke is looking to lock up. We still got a couple pieces along that offensive line that we're looking to lock up. And then some other big prospects that we're looking at as well. So not going through an exhaustive list, but who should Clemson Tiger fans be paying attention to this weekend as we enter this weekend? And is there any possibility, not that we're going to make any predictions here, we don't throw out crystal balls, we don't work for 247, right? But any sort of guys that you think Clemson's got a good chance at either locking up this weekend or gaining a whole lot of ground on the competition out there?
Yeah, I'll start the segment off with a couple of names that we've talked about, and I'm sure a lot of Clemson fans have had their eyes on throughout the cycle that will not be in Clemson. I'll start with top 100 cornerback Samari Matthews. He has decided he will not be coming to Clemson this weekend. This is not a surprise. Nope. Anytime his name has come up, I told you I felt like that recruitment was trending away from Clemson, and it was made official this week. So Samari Matthews will not be in Clemson. Another name that recently scratched his name off the list is running back Carson Baker out of Forsyth, Georgia. That one was definitely shaping up to be a South Carolina, Georgia, potentially battle. Texas and Michigan are in there. So that's one of your top running back targets that's now off the board. You still have Jay Lamar, who is scheduled to come in this weekend, but Carson Baker, that's a big name. He will not be attending. And then the last name I wanted to mention is wide receiver Sedarian Morgan. He has also officially decided he will not be coming to Clemson this weekend. So that leaves 2 receivers that are coming in for official visit weekend in Devin Fitzgerald and Craig Dandridge. So just wanted to highlight those guys real quick. But in terms of the guys that, Clemson is certainly high on the list for, and some of the headliners, obviously, I think the big name is linebacker Tyler Atkinson, who notably has only announced Clemson as his official visit. Clemson has its only official visit so far. Now, like I said last week, I don't think that's going to be that's not going to be true. Probably here in the next week or so. Tyler Atkinson is a kid that's just been he's kind of been slow about announcing where he's going to be. Usually, it's been like the week of when he decides that he's going to be at a particular school. So that's just kind of how he's gone about doing things. But Clemson has done a phenomenal job. They did a really great job when he came in for the elite retreat weekend. And I think they have as good a shot as anybody, to be honest. I think they've gained a lot of ground in this recruitment. I don't expect a commitment, but he does plan to decide in the summer. So we'll see what happens. You get a kid on campus, you never know. When people remember when Peter Woods came to Clemson for his official visit weekend. He gave Clemson his silent commitment that weekend, but he didn't formally announce until July. So that's sometimes those types of things happen. I'm not saying that's the case with Tyler Atkinson. His name is going to command a lot of NIL dollars, and that's going to be a factor in this recruitment. But like I said, I think Clemson has a legitimate shot in this recruitment, and it didn't feel like that a few months ago. So just wanted to throw that out there. On the defensive line, I want to throw out guys like Bryce Perry-White at defensive tackle. He projects to be a defensive tackle. He's been recruited at both defensive tackle and defensive end. But I think Clemson likes him the most at defensive tackle. I've said it time and time again. I think this is one you have to go and win. This is a recruitment you have to go and win. There's a lot of things that are in your favor in that recruitment. This weekend is as good a time as any to see if you can lock him up. Another name on the defensive tackle group that recently emerged this week, Keyshawn Stansel announced his offer today or yesterday. This offer was a long time coming, and he finally gets it heading into his official visit weekend. Clemson has done a lot of the groundwork already prior to him getting this offer, and I really like where they stand with him. And then at defensive end, J.R. Hardrick, we've talked about him a good bit out of Tennessee. I think Clemson has been the apple in his eye, or whatever the saying is. I don't even remember I don't even remember what it is. For a long time, he finally gets that offer. He's bringing his entire family. That's basically
that's a good sign.
With him on his official visit weekend. When recruits do that, those things tend to go well. I remember who was it? I had the name in my head, but I forget. One of the defensive back commits from last year that basically brought his entire family to Clemson before he committed. I want to say it was Corey and Gibson, but I'm not sure. When guys bring their families, to Clemson, there's and not just like their parents, but like extended family.
Yeah, typically they're searching for that nod from everybody that's coming.
Yeah,
and then they already got a pretty good idea going in. They just want everybody to come with them, and then everybody to give them that so that they can go ahead and lock in their commitment.
Yeah, absolutely. I definitely think that he's a guy that I think Clemson is in a good position for, coming in the weekend. On the offensive line, you mentioned it, when you kind of teed it up. Carter Scruggs, I think, is the name that I think everybody should keep their eye on the most. Obviously, you got guys like Leo Delaney, Kenny Ogboko, who I think Clemson is still kind of sneakily hanging around in that recruitment. But I think Carter Scruggs is the guy I think they're the closest to potentially locking down.
Yeah.
But that race is still not completely clear, but I think Clemson is in the forefront, and this weekend will go a long way. So I'm keeping an eye on him. And then I talked about wide receiver. I think I tend to think Clemson stays at the 3 that they have. I don't see a way where like say like a Devin Fitzgerald, maybe he gets the offer, but I don't know if it's one where Clemson will be pushing him to commit. I'll just say it that way. But you never know. Maybe they decide that they just feel like they want to take that fourth guy. But I tend to think that Clemson stays at 3 with Naeem Burrows, Connor Salmon, and Gordon Sellers.
Which ain't too shabby.
Yeah, no, that ain't too shabby. That's nobody here is complaining. That's for sure. Right. Better not be. That's a hell of a receiver haul.
Yeah, if you complain about that, I don't know what to tell you.
Yeah. But something to keep an eye on, though, for sure. Definitely something to keep an eye on. Let's see. Anybody else I want to hit on? Oh, safety is another position that I'm keeping an eye on. You've got two coming in, and Joey O'Brien and Tylen Wilson. Joey O'Brien just recently announced that, confirmed that he will be here in Clemson on Friday for the official visit weekend. Tylen Wilson has been on the books since last week. So Nicky Khan, he's been doing the thing, man. This has been it's kind of been a revelation. Clemson has historically not recruited at the highest level at safety. I think they've done a good job with development at that position, but they've never been one to go after, the star-studded names or like the top 150 type safeties. That hasn't been the norm. You've had your guys here and there, the Andrew Makubas, the Ricardo Jones of the world, but that's those guys have been few and far between. It's mostly been guys like the Kayvon Wallaces and the R.J. Mickens, the Jadar Johnsons. Like, you didn't have all these star-studded names. So you're seeing kind of a shift in Clemson's recruiting efforts at that position a little bit, and they've been going after some bigger names, and so it's going to be interesting to see. But I like both of these guys a lot as recruits. Joey O'Brien, I'm not entirely sure if either of them are, I would say Clemson is the leader for, but Tylen Wilson in particular, he's kind of hard to figure out because he's been a guy that hasn't been very open throughout his recruitment. He just kept things close to the vest. So that while that doesn't give you a lot of clarity, it also means that anything can happen this weekend. So keep an eye on that position group as well. So I think I hit on all the guys I really wanted to. So if you guys have any questions about a particular player, particular recruit heading into the weekend, then feel free to drop it into the comment section. But it's kind of my recruiting official visit weekend primer, so to speak. And yeah, if you guys have any further questions about a particular player that's coming in, then feel free to drop it.
I got a question from Tiggs for you, Jordan. Any chance Taylor Atkinson commits to Clemson shortly?
I won't say there's no chance, but I'm leaning towards he takes other visits, and but like I said, you never know what happens when these kids get on campus, and Clemson has certainly been the hot. I think they've been the hottest team in his recruitment right now. Doesn't mean they're they're the leader, but I think they've gained the most ground, so to speak. And Georgia has already started looking at other linebacker options too, because it seems like they're starting to feel the pressure as the odds-on favorite. And okay, maybe we need to see if we have an out. I think Clemson has put all their chips onto the Tyler Atkinson table, and I think that could be to their benefit. But we'll see what happens.
Absolutely. One from you, from John Sarian, Jordan. Will Devin Fitzgerald get an offer immediately on arrival or right as he departs? Surely he'll get one, right?
I think so, but I don't think it's going to be a situation where Clemson is going to push him to commit. Like I said, I tend to think that he will be he's a guy that to keep an eye on, and he'll be a nice piece if say one of your receiver commits, jump ship. But I don't know. I tend to think that Clemson stays at 3, and so that's where I think things are right now.
Absolutely. David says, I see defensive end numbers picking up. Looks like 3 coming in this weekend.
Yeah. I already mentioned, J.R. Hardrick coming in. Zach Groves is another guy. I don't feel good about Clemson's chances, right, especially in the Zach Groves recruitment right now, but we'll see what happens when you get them on campus. Sometimes things change, but the efforts are certainly there, and I don't think it's an effort thing with Clemson right now. So, um, but I think they definitely need to you know push hard this weekend. Drake Quinn, I think you're definitely still in it for, and this weekend will go a long way in determining whether or not you win that recruitment.
Yeah, absolutely. John says, I'm fully expecting Tate Reynolds' evaluation by the experts to jump after his 2 invites, especially Elite 11. Not that rankings mean so much, but the kid is getting a bum rap.
Yeah, I mean, if you guys follow me on Twitter, I tweeted out, when it was officially announced that he would be an Elite 11 finalist, I said I think he's going to be a top 10 quarterback in the class by the time it ends.
Yeah.
I just, when you look at his career trajectory, a guy that hasn't been playing football very long, but you saw that in his first year as a starter was pretty average as a passer. Didn't throw for a ton of touchdowns. He had some turnover issues, but he ran for 1,000,000 yards, and you saw the athleticism and the raw tools on tape. And then you saw the jump he made from that first year to this past year as a junior, where he's one of the best players in the state. And obviously the dual sport background is something that recruiting analysts and experts love. I mean, I think when you couple that, all those things together, and just the career trajectory to this point, and the jump that I think he's going to make as a senior, I think he's a guy that's going to be tough to ignore in the recruiting landscape. So I definitely expect him to see a huge ratings bump, and he's already starting to see it as he continues to show out at camps and stuff. And this Elite 11 finalist nod is definitely going to go a long way towards that. So, shout out to Tate Reynolds. I mean, I think Clemson got them one. I really do.
Tiggs asked, do we have any running backs visiting?
Yes. As I already mentioned, running back Jay Lamar. I think he's the guy that you ideally, if you can get him, I think that definitely assuages a lot of concerns. Clemson only plans to take one. If he is your one, I think that's a really good pickup. But Georgia certainly has been the odds-on favorite right now. So I think he has some ground to make up. So yeah, we'll see. Sure. Some other names that Clemson has been keeping on the notice is CJ Givers. I tend to think he'll be the guy that Clemson pivots to if Jay Lamar ends up picking elsewhere. But they with CJ Spiller and Clemson, they tend to be this is our guy until he's not type of outfit when it comes to recruiting the running back position. So they're all in on Jay Lamar this weekend. If he picks elsewhere, then they're going to pivot. So we'll see what happens.
Wet Sox asks, is Atkinson the only linebacker visiting?
Yes. Caleb Gordon, I've talked about him in the past. He's now officially a scratch for the official visit weekend. And I talked about it last week. This is not a surprise to Clemson, and Clemson is not all that upset about it. They are, like I said, they are all in on Tyler Atkinson, and they think he is of the utmost importance in this class. So they're all in on him.
Good follow-up question by David on that. Is Clemson not recruiting Caleb Gordon anymore?
He's a guy I'm not keeping track of anymore. I'll just say that.
All right, Intelligent Savage has got a good one. He said, what recruit are you guys most excited to have on campus this weekend, not name Tyler Atkinson?
Most excited to have on campus. That's a good one. I mean, if you had a guy like Sadarian Morgan still coming like that, he probably would have been my answer. But I think I already talked about Bryce Perry White a good bit. I think he's a special talent, and I think that's a recruitment you have to win. So I'd probably say him. I think the two safeties, Joey O'Brien and Tylen Wilson, are really talented football players. So I think they have a potential nod there, but I think I would go Bryce Perry-White or Carter Scruggs.
Carter Scruggs is who I was going to say.
Yeah.
That dude's frame is big, ridiculous. Yeah.
He's been going crazy in the camps too. He's already a pretty highly regarded prospect, but I think he's got even more of a jump to make.
He's just mauling people, man.
Mm-hmm.
Like that dude's got a potential to be really special. So
yeah,
definitely excited to get him on campus. Hopefully we can get him to shut it down.